What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So it is that time. It is time for episode 1 of this series where we are finally diving into Alien Earth. It feels like it has literally been forever since we started talking about Alien Earth, from the time it was announced to still images, little like 10-15 second teasers, all these fan experiences at SXSW earlier this year, and casting announcements. And we just kept wondering. I mean, I remember at the time we were wondering, when are we going to get an actual full trailer? When are we going to get it? When are we going to get it? We finally got those, and the date kept creeping closer and closer as to fall, and we didn't know exactly what the date was going to be. We finally got the release schedule. And here we are. Episodes 1 and 2 dropped earlier this past week. So I did decide, I wasn't originally going to do, the review video the day after, right? But I didn't, thinking about it, that's not fair, right? Because I know a lot of people can't necessarily watch it the day of. They may wait till the next day or the day after. So I decided to wait almost the entire week to run its course, allow people enough time to watch it for themselves if they decide to watch it. Meaning, I know some people would just prefer to have the whole season release and then they'll just binge watch the entire thing, which is fine too. But we're not going to wait for that. We're just going to do a weekly drop every week, as I've mentioned in previous videos. So one thing that we are going to do different, though, and I mentioned this in the latest Dexter Resurrection episode 7 review, going forward for TV series, and we're going to start it with we're starting right from the get-go on this one. I'm not going to do a play-by-play of the episodes. I don't think that's a good use of time, and I think that we can just get lost in the weeds, right? And I don't want to create, especially with something like this. It's 2 episodes. They're roughly like 50 some minutes each. I mean, we went through like almost scene by scene. I don't want to create a 2-hour video, right? I want to keep these videos, review videos, pretty 8 to 10 minutes tops, and that's giving a quick review, or not even a review, so to speak, of a rundown of the episode, just some highlights of the things from the episode that I liked, didn't like, and then overall rough score of the episodes, overall series, and then where we're going to go from next. And what I'm going to try to do, if it is released like we are going to do for this video, once we get done doing the review, I did find an article where it talks about how already episodes 1 and 2 have pretty much just trampled over what Prometheus and Alien Covenant had set up. So it's already contradicting what was taking place there. So we're going to cover off on those. I think there's some great points, especially going into the series, if you didn't already notice some of these things. And then we're going to wrap up this video taking a look at it's about a minute long, the promo for episode 3. So this whole thing, I want to just caution for spoilers. Again, we're not going to get into the weeds, but there's going to be information that's going to come up. It's going to be spoilers, right? So if you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, just beware. So that's how I'm going to structure the videos going forward when we start doing reviews on TV series, especially even movies. 8 to 10 minutes. I think that's going to be about all I'm going to keep it to. So now that all that is out of the way, the expectations, the foundation of how this is going to proceed, I'll create a playlist like I have done with the other TV series that will put all these for Alien Earth in, just to keep it nice and clean on the channel. So let's jump into it. Like I already mentioned, we're going to talk spoilers for this. So Alien Earth episodes 1 and 2 dropped earlier this past week, and episode 1 was called Neverland, and episode 2 called Mr. October. Now, Neverland, there are concepts, even some of the character names, and from my understanding from some of the interviews that were done with some of the characters, specifically Sydney Chandler, who plays Wendy, who is pretty much the primary or main character thus far in the series, is being somewhat loosely based on a little bit of the Peter Pan story. And then episode 2, Mr. October, kind of refers back to Reggie Jackson, New York Yankee player, and there's a scene and a story in episode 2 as to that whole reference, and a pivotal point in Reggie's career, one of his most famous hits, and again, there's a story behind that, which is, I'm sure, why they called it Mr. October. So what do I think about Alien Earth thus far? So let's get into those details. So I will say, I go for episode 1, we know that this is supposedly taking place before the original Alien film from a timeline perspective. So going into episode 1, I was glad to see, like, we're on the spaceship, and it has the same look, feel, sounds, the little clickety clacks, everything is very reminiscent, pretty much the same as you would have imagined or you had seen in Alien, the original film. So I love the fact that they kept that, right? Even though it's not the exact same time period, it's years before the first film, the aesthetics, again, the sounds, everything was pretty much on point. They didn't deviate too far from that, which I did enjoy. We do find, though, as we were, I guess, at one point meant to believe the Yutani Corporation or whatever, the Weyland Yutani Corporation, the whole time we had meant to believe that they were the one true power, right? Well, you find out very quickly in this series, that this series starts off, there's, I think, 5 different companies or corporations or whatever dealing with different things. Like, one's dealing with AI, one's dealing with synthetics, one's dealing with cyborgs, and you see this play out, meaning you see like these variations, right, of this. Like you see a cyborg, you see a synthetic, you see how someone has their consciousness or whatever you want to call it moved from like their body into like an AI body, right? So we see that play out, and I guess you would call it like in the early stages of when these corporations were around until one probably then took over. Like I said, I think there's like 4 or 5 of them that they mention very briefly in the series. Again, I felt like the way episode 1 is structured, and it kind of leads us a little bit into episode 2, which in episode 2 they kind of tighten up the story, but in episode 1 we're jumping from 2 different stories, a story happening on the spaceship and a story happening on Earth. Right up until this point, the spaceship crashes on Earth, and then that's where we get more of a succinct story all happening kind of within the same place, even though we're following I don't want to say 2 different groups, but we are following 2 different almost like sets of characters up until the point we get to the end of episode 2, where they start to converge and come together. And again, it's primarily focusing on the character Wendy, where we do see she's a young child, cancer, and she has her, again, consciousness, I guess you can call it, transferred into an AI body. And this is done with other children who have cancer as well. They get their consciousness gets transferred over, their AI bots or robots, however you want to call them, and they kind of turn into this search and rescue group because they have these abilities that obviously humans don't have. And she's looking for her brother. She's been monitoring her brother, watching her brother, and we then see the brother's story playing out as well. He's part of a military group. He's like a medic. And when the spaceship crashes, which is a whole separate story, so there's really like 3 happening, where we see a cyborg pretty much, kind of like in the first Alien film, turn on the crew, pretty much like kill the crew and crash lands the ship. But from what I can remember, we don't know why he's doing it. We don't know why he turned on the crew and pretty much led them to slaughter by the xenomorph. And we see a full-blown xenomorph, fully grown, killing people and everything, and almost tries to take out the cyborg up until he manages to get into like this little, like, I don't want to say escape pod, but this little like maybe like escape room type thing to protect himself and while the ship crashes. But one thing we see a few of the other little like species that were captured by the space vessel, very like small ones, but we don't see anything large like what we've seen in the teasers, right? We thought there might be like this massive like bumblebee and some of the other things that we were led to believe that we're going to see at some point. The only thing we've seen fully grown, fully out there destroying things is the xenomorph, which again kind of contradicts Alien Covenant, Prometheus, which we'll touch on here in a little bit because we're going to wrap this up as far as the review goes. So once the ship crashes, episode 2 is primarily, you're following the story of Wendy trying to find her brother, the brother trying to, do his job, but also escape because he comes in contact with the xenomorph, and almost gets killed a couple of times. while the other group is coming across the other species, right, and realizing, hey, this vessel here was capturing all these other things. And then as episode 2 wraps up, one of the pivotal things, which I'm hoping they do answer at some point, how this is happening, Timothy Oliphant's character, which I believe he's a cyborg or a synthetic, or maybe he's an AI. Actually, I think he's an AI because he's owned or works for Prodigy, so he'd be an AI as well. He's looking at this monitor, and we see all the eggs, like the alien eggs that we saw all in the early films. There's probably a good almost like 8 to 12 maybe eggs, and he's like, everyone get there, converge on it. We gotta secure it. And then as the episode wraps up, that's what they are doing. They're securing this while Wendy's brother gets, taken by the xenomorph, and she's off to try to save him. So we don't know how that's going to play out. But the question remains: how are these eggs? Did they just take these eggs from wherever they found them, whatever planet they were on, and now they're in this room, kind of laid out, and the face huggers aren't coming about because they're just out in the open? And otherwise, are we assuming there's a queen involved somewhere along the line, which I can't imagine we would have already be introducing a full queen into the story, because we obviously saw a queen in Aliens, the second film. But I can't imagine they would go down that route already in this, when it's so much further behind the timeline than the Aliens film. So, scoring these episodes, I thought they were great for foundational to set the tone for this series. I feel like they have a lot of ground to make up, because I think they're only doing 8 episodes. And so you only have 6 left, and you're going to have to cram in a lot of stuff into these next 6 episodes, and without any fillers, because from what we saw in the previews and the teasers, the xenomorph gets loose off this spaceship and out into the wild. And how they're going to contain that is going to be interesting, especially with the fact that there's all these other eggs that are on the ship, but the ship's been destroyed. There's all these exit points that these face huggers can just hatch and then just take off until they find a host. So it's going to be interesting again to see how they're going to be able to tell this story and contain this within the next 6 episodes, while also trying to say we eradicated the species from Earth because they were never on Earth or known to be on Earth in the subsequent films that follow this timeline. So scoring this, I'm not like me. I mean, many other people thought that these were absolutely fire. These were amazing episodes. This is an amazing series. I will say the one thing I was happy to see is we didn't have to wait long to see the xenomorph, the full-grown alien. We got to see that play out. It was out there killing people, killing a lot of people. There were some scenes that were nice and bloody and gory, what you would expect to see from an alien TV series or an alien film. So they didn't hold back on that aspect. So again, I'm glad we didn't have to wait till like episode 4 or 5, just following like a face hugger around, or following someone who had been impregnated, and we're just waiting for the little baby alien to pop out and then grow. So we didn't have to go through that whole cycle. We just got right to it. So I give them points for that. I don't think these are 5 out of 5 episodes. I don't think these are 10 out of 10, whatever scoring you want to give it. I don't believe that at all. For me, great start, got it, but you got to ramp it up. You got to pick it up. I will say, when I got into episode 2, I was kind of sitting there like, oh, okay, let's go. Let's. I mean, there were some exciting points. I'm not gonna dispute that, but there were times I was sitting there like, okay, come on, let's pick it up. I mean, I feel like we're this is the highs there. It feels like we have a lot of more lows than we do highs thus far. Again, I understand we're setting foundation. But when you only have 8 episodes, you can't waste a lot of time for foundation, in my opinion, especially 2 episodes. That doesn't dispute the fact that I thought there were some great scenes, but overall, 3.5 per episode, per 1 and 2. So overall, I'd give the series thus far a 3.5. For me, it's not a 5 out of 5. And I enjoy the Alien franchise. And I enjoy, unlike many people, when it comes to like the original films, I enjoy 1 through 3. I do enjoy part 3. I know many people think it's trash. Many people think it's horrible. I enjoy it for what it is. Now, when you start getting beyond that, that's where you start to lose me. as far as the time period for when those were being released. Now you start talking like Romulus and Prometheus and those things. I enjoy those films, but this thus far, for me, it's got to start ramping up. Otherwise, this is going to be a one and done viewing for me, and it's going to be, for me, it'll be easily forgotten. So that's where I'm at with the series. Episodes 1 and 2, 3.5, series thus far, a 3.5. Now, I want to jump into the article I was telling you all about. So let me pull that up. So that is this. Disney officially rewrites Alien canon, changing the franchise forever. So this was published after the episodes. So this is going to have spoilers in it as well. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was some things I mentioned that I noticed as I was scrolling through this. I mean, it even mentions it as well. Alien Earth ignores Prometheus and rewrites canon. Alien Earth doesn't outright rewrite the events of Prometheus and Alien Covenant, but it certainly muddies the waters surrounding them. Earth basically ignores both Prometheus and Covenant. Unlike Alien Romulus, there's no reference to Prometheus's black goo, Peter Wedding's journey to meet the engineers, or David's experimentation with xenomorphs. So I thought that's interesting. Okay, so let's keep, because if you look at the timeline here, obviously Prometheus, Alien Covenant happened first, then Alien Earth. And then you see it's not 2 years supposedly then before the first Alien film. So it's not that big of a time gap between a lot of this. Even between Covenant and Alien Earth, it's not that big of a time gap. 16 years? So again, we're not talking that long. So if we keep going down, okay, when the ship crash lands and serves as the foundation of Earth's plot, was sent 65 years prior to 2120. That means it found xenomorph specimens in approximately 2088, well before David began his experiments. The fact that the ship found xenomorphs about 5 years before David even began his experiments outright debunks the idea that David was their creator. Prometheus and Covenant were building to that moment, but Earth has dashed any chance of it being realized. The ending of Alien Covenant saw David take over the ship and heavily implied that he would continue experimenting on xenomorphs, presumably until he created the classic black-skinned xenomorph. Alien Earth, however, has made it clear that the xenomorphs were around long before David. And then this goes on. We're not going to cover this next section because it goes on to talk about how it contradicts Alien versus Predator. Again, I don't care about those films. Those films are absolute trash. They're garbage. I watched those when they were first released. I have never watched them again. And so this goes on to talk a little bit more about how Alien Earth's first 2 episodes already massively changed the franchise. And I will put the link for this article in the description of this video. So if you want to read through this even in more detail, because even in this next section, why it makes sense for Alien Earth to ignore Prometheus and Alien versus Predator, right? So this is one of the things I don't want to say griped about, but I stood on my soapbox on was how they were going to start explaining things. And if we go back to the timeline, my biggest thing is going to be for Aliens. It's the second film, but in the timeline you can see we had Alien, then Alien Romulus, and then Aliens. My biggest thing is going to be is in that film, it was very specifically mentioned, we can't allow this species or this to get back to Earth. If it does, it will kill mankind. And the character Burr, I think it was played by Paul Reiser, he tried to get Ripley and Newt impregnated by the face hugger, so when they went into cryosleep, they could bring them back to the space station's orbit Earth, or bring them back to Earth so they'd have a specimen to do tests on. That was his whole goal, and that's what they were trying to stop and prevent. And obviously, he ended up getting killed. So they were all under the assumption, under the belief that the species had never been on Earth. And my biggest gripe about this series was how they were going to explain that away. How is it that all these people in Aliens wouldn't have known about the events of Alien Earth, especially now that you have this massive ship crash land right in the middle of a city? They would have known about that event. And if the xenomorph had gotten loose now, the corporations know about it, right? I mean, the whale, Utani Whalen, that's their ship that crashed, and Prodigy now is the company that got there first. Now they're claiming it's theirs, and they want the specimen. So this wouldn't have been top secret information. A lot of people would have known about this. So the fact that the people in Aliens don't know about it, or they're not going to, they have to somehow explain that. For me, in my brain, they need to somehow explain that in the series. So Anyways, I thought this was very interesting how they, I mean, it's right there in the headline. They're already contradicting, they're rewriting things, things aren't aligning. So, all right, so we're about to wrap this one up. So what we're going to do is take a look at the Alien Earth Episode 3 official like promo or teaser. So we're going to take a look at that. It's kind of like a trailer for the next episode. I thought it'd be good to look at. And what we'll try to do, if these are released ahead of time, by the time we do these reviews, we'll be sure to take a look at them as well. All right, so let's jump over to this trailer and see what, hopefully this gives us a little bit of insights into episode 3.
I'm worried. I mean, if we did this wrong, best case, we got a bunch of AIs running around thinking that they're human. Worst case, we killed 6 kids.
Do you hear that? They're talking to me.
When a hostile alien species decides to speak, one needs to ask why.
They're experiments, Dan. That's what we do. We study.
Like you study us.
A world of infinite potential.
There's a feeling you get when the monsters come. Maybe you're feeling it now.
She's just a kid.
Keep telling yourself that.
All right, so we did see there exactly what I was talking about. So obviously they get the eggs back to their research facility, you know, on their little island or whatever. We see them cutting open one of them. We see the face hugger moving around. We even saw a xenomorph out in the wild, and I'm wondering if it was just the same one that we've seen in episodes 1 and 2. Or if these face huggers have somehow gotten loose and now we have more than just one. And again, if we have more than just one, you got to contain it. But then how are you going to explain this away for the other future films? Unless they're just, as that article mentioned, they're just going to ignore that all as well. And this is just going to kind of be its like splinter off story from the timeline where it's almost like going to create a new timeline on its own. So anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Again, kicking off our Alien Earth series for this was episodes 1 and 2. We'll be back next weekend for our thoughts on episode 3. So drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know if you've watched episodes 1 and 2. What did you think? And how do you feel about the fact that it's rewriting history, so to speak, on the previous films in the timeline, which again would have been Prometheus and Covenant, and now the future films on the timeline, which would be Alien Romulus, you know, all the other ones, Alien, so on and so forth. So again, drop a comment in the comments section. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Later.